Ari Folman is probably best known to most of you as the director, writer, producer, and protagonist of last year's Academy Award nominated film Waltz with Bashir. Ari first started working with animation in his series that's been screening on the wall over here, The Material That Love Is Made Of, a 2004 documentary series for TV. When you watch this outside of Israel, you get the feeling that you're very much peeking into the culture, you know, and that you're learning something that you definitely didn't know as somebody who's maybe been a tourist in Israel, you know, by meeting the Thai girl, by meeting the boxer. And it felt, at least to me, that the film has a lot to say about life in Israel. Donna Rubin, who's here, she's the Massa representative for Israel long-term programs at the Israel Center and a Birthright Israel Next Fellow.
Hi, welcome. Something that I find very interesting is this fantasy that Birthright kind of provides for everybody of Israel as this perfect country and this conceived notion of how amazing everything is. So my question for you is, how have outside audiences reacted to your work about Israel with this fantasy in mind? Have they reacted well to it? Is it extremely surprising to them? How has that reaction been?
Every country responded to the film as a reflection to the country's history.
הפגישה עם בועז התקיימה בחורף 2006. באותו הלילה, בפעם הראשונה אחרי יותר מ-20 שנה, חטפתי פלשבק נוראי ממלחמת לבנון. לא סתם מלבנון, ממערב ביירות.
How do you invent the words of something that is so traumatic? Is it only through art you can find the words to this kind of trauma?
I'm a compulsive story inventor. Wherever I go, I'll try to make a story out of it. Basically, I believe it's all about closing circles in your life. For example, in St. Clara, for me, although I was 30 years old when I did it, it was closing a circle with the school I attended for 12 years.
In 1996, Ari wrote and directed St. Clara, a feature film that won 7 Israeli Academy Awards and was screened throughout the world to critical acclaim.
I want to know how being Jewish affects your filmmaking.
I think for myself, I think for many years now that I'm more Jewish than Israeli. My identity comes from home, which is a completely non-religious family. My parents are both Holocaust survivors, and when they came out of Auschwitz, the deal with God was over. And the religious never entered the house. You know, I hardly had a bar mitzvah because I insisted. We never went to synagogues. I think that because of what Israel has become, without going into politics, today, and because of my origins with the Holocaust and all the implications of that, I feel it's not only, it's like for the past 10, 15 years I feel it. I think that I'm much more Jewish than Israeli. And of course, it reflects everything I do in my work, in my everyday life.
I thought he was a really interesting guy. I haven't seen the movie, so it was nice to hear his impressions of just filmmaking in general.
I really enjoy him. He has kind of a nice low-key cynicism in his wit, and I do feel that he's a little exhausted of the political side of the movie, but I think it's very hard for an artist to make a movie and not have people either want it to be just a movie about art or just a political statement.
Was there anything that he answered that stuck with you that you found particularly interesting?
Yeah, when the girl asked about what his connection was to being Jewish and making films, and when he said that he felt more Jewish than Israeli, but he's not religious, I thought that was interesting, and I wish he had talked about that a little bit more.
Thank you so much on behalf of the Israel Center and the Jewish Agency and me and everybody here for joining us. Thank you, Ari.